Most abandoned places are quiet, empty, and lifeless. Places where time feels like it simply stopped and moved on without them. But abandoned water parks are different. They were built for noise, for screaming children, echoing laughter, and controlled chaos. And when they're left to rot, that energy doesn't just disappear. It lingers in the rusted slides that creak in the wind, in the pools filled with thick black water, and in the dark corners where shadows seem to move on their own. Tonight, you're about to hear 3 terrifying, true-style horror stories that all took place inside abandoned water parks, and in each case, something was caught on camera that no one has ever been able to explain. The first video was uploaded to a small urban exploration forum sometime in 2021, buried between shaky clips of abandoned malls and forgotten hospitals, and it didn't stand out at first. The title was simple and almost lazy: Exploring Abandoned Wave Park. Something followed us. There were no thumbnails screaming for attention, no dramatic warnings, just a single still frame of a rusted water slide disappearing into darkness. I didn't realize then that I was about to become part of a story that people would dissect, analyze frame by frame, and argue about for years. I was one of the people in that video, and even now, thinking about it makes my hands feel cold. The water park had been closed for more than 10 years, quietly rotting just outside our town. It wasn't deep in the wilderness, but it was far enough away that most people forgot it existed. Overgrown trees wrapped around the property like a living fence, their branches tangled through bent sections of chain-link fencing that had long since lost their purpose. When the park shut down, the city drained the pools, locked the gates, and walked away, leaving behind concrete basins, sun-bleached slides, and structures that were never meant to sit in silence. We didn't break in that night. One of the old service gates on the east side had been torn open years earlier, probably by vandals or scrappers, and had hung there crooked and useless, creaking slightly whenever the wind pushed against it. There were 3 of us: me, my cousin Aaron, and his friend Miguel. Aaron was the kind of guy who documented everything, convinced that one day he'd catch something incredible on camera. He wore a chest-mounted GoPro that blinked red whenever it was recording. Miguel carried a heavy-duty flashlight with a beam strong enough to cut through darkness. I didn't bring anything except the uneasy feeling in my stomach that told me this was a bad idea from the very beginning. The moment we stepped inside the park, the smell hit us like a wall. It was a mix of rotting leaves, damp concrete, mildew, and stagnant water that had been sitting for years with nowhere to go. The wave pool stretched out in front of us, a massive concrete bowl that had once been full of people and artificial waves, now filled with dark rainwater and slick green algae that clung to the sides like a living thing. The slides towered above us, their bright colors long faded, rising out of the darkness like skeletal remains of something that had died screaming. Aaron laughed nervously and said it felt like a post-apocalyptic movie set, the kind where the world ends and amusement parks are left behind as monuments to how loud and careless people used to be. I remember trying to laugh along, but my eyes kept drifting to the shadows at the edges of the park, the places where Miguel's flashlight didn't quite reach. That's when the camera caught the first movement, something none of us noticed in real time. At the far end of the wave pool, near the lifeguard tower, something crossed the frame for just a second. It wasn't fast, and it wasn't dramatic, just a shape moving where nothing should have been moving. A shadow passed through another shadow, briefly blocking out the faint reflection of moonlight on the water. There was no reason for it to be there, but we didn't see it then. We kept walking, our footsteps echoing too loudly in the open space, each sound bouncing off the empty concrete and coming back to us, slightly distorted. The lifeguard tower stood near the edge of the pool, tilted just enough to look wrong, but still intact. The ladder leading up to it was rusted, the metal eaten away in places, and the red plastic seat was gone, leaving behind only a metal frame that looked like ribs. Miguel raised his flashlight and aimed it toward the top of the tower, and the beam stopped dead. He froze, his grip tightening. "There's something up there," he said quietly, his voice suddenly serious. Aaron scoffed and told him it was probably just debris or an old jacket someone had thrown up there years ago. Without waiting for a response, he grabbed the ladder and started climbing, the metal groaning under his weight. About halfway up, he slowed down, then stopped completely. The joking tone vanished from his voice. The GoPro footage shows him standing still, his chest rising and falling too fast, the camera shaking slightly with each breath. "There's fresh footprints," he whispered, and the word fresh made my stomach drop. "In the dust." That didn't make sense. The park was sealed in mud, leaves, and debris. It hadn't been cleaned or maintained in over a decade, and yet the footprints were clear enough that Aaron could make out the heel and toe patterns. No one had mentioned inviting anyone else. As we stood there trying to process that, we heard the sound that finally snapped us out of our disbelief. Splashing. Slow, deliberate splashing. It came from behind us, from the wave pool. The camera swung around just in time to catch ripples spreading across the surface of the dark water. There was no wind, no rain, and no animals anywhere near the pool. The ripples grew wider, overlapping each other, as if something had just moved through the water and stopped. Then the ladder on the lifeguard tower creaked. It was a dry, strained sound, the kind metal makes when weight is put on it after years of neglect. Something was climbing down. We didn't wait to see what it was. Instinct took over and we ran, our footsteps slapping against wet concrete as we headed for the gate we'd come through. None of us spoke, not until we were back in the car with the doors locked and the engine running. Later, when Aaron uploaded the footage and we watched it back in the safety of his living room, we saw what we had missed in the moment. As Aaron reached the top of the lifeguard tower, the camera angle shifted just enough to show the space behind the empty chair. A figure stood there, perfectly still, its outline barely distinguishable from the darkness behind it. It didn't move, it didn't react, it just watched, as if it had been waiting for us to notice it all along. The second video surfaced quietly on YouTube, uploaded by a channel that had only a handful of subscribers and no real audience to speak of. And within weeks of appearing online, both the video and the channel itself vanished without explanation. The water park was located deep in the desert, miles away from any major town, surrounded by endless stretches of sand and scrubland. It had been shut down years earlier after a drowning incident that locals rarely discussed. Whenever the park was mentioned, conversations would abruptly change, as if even acknowledging what happened there felt dangerous. According to old news articles, the park closed temporarily after the incident, but it never reopened. Nature reclaimed it quickly. Heat cracked the concrete, sand buried walkways, and the silence settled in like a permanent resident. The man filming that day was completely alone. He narrated calmly as he walked through the park, his voice steady and almost detached, as if he were trying to convince himself there was nothing to be afraid of. His flashlight beam cut through the darkness as the sun dipped below the horizon, revealing empty snack stands with shattered windows, torn signage flapping weakly in the dry wind, and pools so dry and cracked they looked like dried riverbeds. There was no background music, no exaggerated reactions, just the sound of his footsteps crunching on sand and debris. He commented on how strange it felt, how a place once filled with people could feel so abandoned, but there was no fear in his tone yet. Eventually, he reached the tallest slide in the park, a massive enclosed tube that towered above everything else. It spiraled downward in tight loops, disappearing into darkness long before reaching the bottom. The slide was still intact, its faded plastic coated in a fine layer of desert dust. The man tilted the camera upward, following the curve of the slide, and let out a low whistle. "I'm not going inside," he said, calmly, almost casually. "I just want to show how long it is." He stepped closer and aimed the camera into the entrance.
At first, there was nothing to see, just darkness swallowing the beam of his flashlight, the curved walls of the slide reflecting the light back in dull patches. For a few seconds, everything was still. Then the sound started. It was faint at first, barely audible over the sound of the wind, but once you noticed it, it was impossible to ignore. A dragging noise echoed from deep within the slide, slow, wet, rhythmic. It sounded like something heavy being pulled along the plastic surface, inch by inch, coming upwards against gravity. The man stopped talking. The camera zoomed in slightly, the flashlight beam trembling just a little as his grip tightened. The dragging noise grew louder, closer, each scrape echoing unnaturally through the hollow tube. Halfway down the slide, something pale pressed against the plastic from the inside. It wasn't sudden or aggressive, it was deliberate, as if whatever it was wanted to be seen. A hand flattened against the inner wall of the slide, the fingers too long, bending at angles that didn't look human, joints flexing in ways that made the skin stretch unnaturally. The man sucked in a sharp breath and stumbled backward, nearly tripping over loose debris. He whispered something under his breath, a curse or a prayer, and kept the camera trained on the slide entrance. The dragging noise continued, faster now, more urgent, like whatever was inside the slide was moving fast now, no longer constrained by gravity. The camera cut out abruptly mid-scream, the screen going black with no outro, no explanation, and no sign of what happened next. Police were alerted after viewers reported the video, concerned by the abrupt ending and the disturbing imagery. Search teams were sent to the park, but they never found the man, his equipment, or any evidence that he had been there at all. No footprints, no vehicle, nothing. Strangely, the very next day, the water park was officially sealed off by authorities, fenced up, and marked as restricted property. No public statement was ever released explaining why. The slide still stands out there in the desert, spiraling into darkness, its exit leading nowhere, waiting silently for someone else to look inside.
This last story is the reason I will never explore abandoned places again. Not even out of curiosity, not even in daylight, not even with other people around. I didn't sneak into this water park or wander through it with a flashlight and a camera. I never set foot inside it at all, and somehow that makes what happened feel even worse. At the time, I worked security for a property management company that specialized in foreclosed and abandoned commercial properties. Most of the job was boring paperwork and routine checks, but one of our contracts involved an abandoned water park that was scheduled for demolition. The park had been shut down for years after financial issues and a string of safety violations, and by the time I was assigned to it, the place was little more than a liability waiting to be torn down. My job was simple. Once a week, I logged into a remote system and checked the security cameras to make sure no one was trespassing or vandalizing the property. There were cameras positioned throughout the park, covering entrances, concession areas, the wave pool, and the lazy river. Most of them were dead. Years of exposure to heat, moisture, and neglect had taken their toll, and the feeds were either black screens or frozen images from months earlier. Only one camera still worked consistently, camera 6. It overlooked the lazy river. The lazy river had once been one of the park's main attractions, a long, winding concrete channel where people floated by on inner tubes, drifting under artificial bridges and fake rock formations. Now it was completely dry, cracked, filled with dirt, leaves, and debris. The first few weeks I checked the feed, nothing seemed wrong. The camera showed exactly what it should have, an empty, silent stretch of concrete lit faintly by a single security light that flickered on and off at night. Then, one week, I noticed movement. It was subtle enough that I almost missed it, just a shift in the shadows at the far end of the frame. I rewound the footage and watched it again, this time paying closer attention to the timestamp, 2:17 a.m. A person walked slowly through the dried riverbed. They weren't running, sneaking, or shining a flashlight around like most trespassers did. They were just walking, hands at their sides, heads slightly bowed, moving at a steady, almost casual pace.
There was no phone light, no flashlight beam, nothing to suggest they were trying to see where they were going. The camera's night vision gave their body a pale, washed-out look, making it hard to tell any details. I assumed it was a homeless person or an urban explorer who had found a way in, so I flagged the clip and made a note to mention it in my report. What bothered me was what happened next. The person stopped directly under one of the old decorative bridges that crossed the lazy river. They stood there for a few seconds, completely still, then turned and walked out of frame, disappearing into the darkness. That alone wouldn't have stuck with me if it hadn't happened again. The next night, when I checked the feed, there was another clip at 2:17 a.m. Same person, same slow walk through the riverbed, same lack of light, same path. And once again, they stopped under the bridge before leaving the frame. I went back through the archived footage, my unease growing with each click. Every single night, the footage showed the same thing at the exact same time, 2:17 a.m. Not 2:16, not 2:18, always 2:17. The person never varied their pace, never looked toward the camera, never deviated from the path. It was like watching a loop, except the timestamps confirmed it was happening in real time. I brought it up to my supervisor, who shrugged it off and said it was probably someone using the park as a shortcut. He told me to keep an eye on it and call local authorities if it escalated. For a few nights, nothing changed, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Then, one night, something new happened. I was watching the live feed when the timestamp rolled over to 2:17 a.m., my eyes already fixed on the screen. The figure appeared right on cue, walking through the lazy river exactly as before. As they reached the bridge, the camera's audio indicator flickered on. That alone was strange, because the system was set to only activate audio when there was a loud enough noise nearby. At first, all I heard was static, then breathing, heavy, labored breathing, so close to the microphone that it sounded like someone had leaned in and exhaled directly into it. The figure on screen stopped under the bridge, head tilting slightly upward, as if they were listening. My skin prickled. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Then, through the static and the breathing, a whisper came through the speakers, clear enough that I knew I hadn't imagined it. "Still watching?" The voice was low and calm, not distorted, not echoing, just close, too close. I slammed my laptop shut and sat there in silence, my heart pounding in my ears. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I opened my laptop with shaking hands and logged back into the system, half expecting the feed to still be there, half hoping it wouldn't. Camera 6 was gone. Not offline, not frozen, gone. The system showed an error message, as if the camera had never existed in the first place. I called my supervisor, and he told me demolition had been put on hold indefinitely. No reason given. A few weeks later, I heard through office gossip that when a crew went out to assess the site, they couldn't find the camera mounted where it was supposed to be. The bracket was still there, rusted and empty, but the camera itself was missing. No cut wires, no damage, just gone. The park was left standing, untouched, its demolition quietly canceled. I quit that job not long after, citing stress and personal reasons. Every once in a while, usually late at night, I think about that lazy river and that bridge. And sometimes, when I can't sleep, I check online forums out of morbid curiosity. Every once in a while, someone posts a screenshot from an abandoned water park security feed. A dried-up lazy river, a timestamp that reads 2:17 a.m., and in the corner of the frame, a familiar label flickers back to life. Camera 6. Abandoned water parks aren't empty. They're waiting, silent, decaying spaces where laughter once echoed, where music once played over loudspeakers, and where thousands of people once gathered to escape the heat and forget their worries for a while. Now, all that remains are rusted slides, cracked concrete, and pools filled with dark, unmoving water that reflects nothing but the sky above. These places weren't built to be quiet, and that's what makes them so unsettling when they are. Every peeling sign, every broken locker, and every lifeguard chair left behind feels like a reminder that something ended abruptly, without closure. When a place meant for joy is abandoned, it doesn't simply become empty, it becomes charged with memories, echoes, and questions that never get answered. What makes abandoned water parks especially disturbing is how exposed they feel. There are no walls to hide behind, no ceilings to provide comfort, only wide open spaces that leave you feeling small and watched. At night, the wind pushes through hollow slides, creating low groans that sound almost intentional. Moonlight reflects off stagnant pools in ways that make it hard to tell what's moving and what isn't. Cameras, when they still work, capture things that human eyes might miss. Shadows that linger too long, figures that appear where no one should be, and movements that don't make sense in places long since deserted. And when footage like that surfaces, it forces a terrifying question into your mind. If no one is supposed to be there, then who or what is being recorded?